Right. Well, welcome everyone to the Koochiching County public hearing on cannabis ordinance. We'll just kick this off. Maybe we can introduce ourselves, and if the members of the cannabis committee could also introduce themselves, that would be great. Jason Schulblum, Commissioner for District 4.
Ricky Roach, Koochiching County Commissioner, District 2, and I'm on the Cannabis Committee.
Yep, I'm also on the Cannabis Committee. Adam McIntyre, District 3.
There Erickson, District 5.
District Hill, District 1.
Please, Adam.
I'm County Commissioner. I'm on the Cannabis Committee.
Margaret Hyam, County Administration Assistant. I'm on the Cannabis Committee.
Matthew Gwynn, Koochiching County Environmental Services, and on the Cannabis Committee.
Anyone else? Derek?
Derek Foss, Public Health and Services Director, Cannabis Committee as well.
Whitney Sims, I'm also on the Cannabis Committee.
Sheriff?
Sure. Oh, what? Sorry, I'm handling another issue. What's that?
Yeah, Sheriff Barrett is on the Cannabis Committee.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Putting on fire.
All right. We got everybody? Pretty much?
Yeah, and then County Attorney Pulaski is also on the Cannabis Committee, but he was in trial today, so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to proceed. We're going to go through the ordinance first, and Administrator Cole is going to go through word for word, top to bottom with this here. And then if you have questions, please write them down, and we will circle back and then open the comments up to the public. But if we want to hold the questions until he gets done kind of presenting it and stuff, and maybe we'll go from there after that. So, but thank you all for being here too. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as most of you know, the state legalized the sale of cannabis effective the 1st of 2025. And the Office of Cannabis Management of the state has been working on rulemaking, and it's been a little delayed, but it's been published now. I think they've accepted some applications. And so really we've been working through that process to understand it as well. The committee started meeting about 9 months ago, and has met several times now and gone on to draft where we're at today with our proposed ordinance. We started with a model ordinance that came from the Office of Cannabis Management. A lot of the ordinance is very reflective of state statute. As we understand it, anybody that's registered to have a cannabis license, and there are several different kinds of cannabis licenses, has to be licensed through the state first. So that process starts with the state of Minnesota, and then part of their process is they'll reach out to us to make sure that the proposed site is zoned correctly, and so that's our planning and zoning department. And then if they get a preliminary license or they're licensed through the state state statute passes on registration of cannabis businesses and the enforcement of cannabis rules to local government. The statute also allows cities to delegate, cities and townships, Koochiching has no townships, but the statute allows cities and townships to delegate authority of registration and enforcement to the county. Currently in Koochiching County, we have received delegation from the city of Norfolk, the city of Rainier, and the city of Little Fork. I do anticipate that Big Falls and Mezcal will also delegate authority, and I have been told that the city of International Falls is looking at doing their own ordinance. So what that means is that our ordinance will only apply to cities that have delegated to us, and any places outside, for example, the city of International Falls, the city limits of International Falls. And if they have their own ordinance, that will be governing their city. So, with that, there's packets that include the draft of the proposed ordinance. Did everybody get one that wants one? So on the second page is our draft ordinance, and I'm just going to read through it. And like Chair Schofield said, we'll get to public comment afterwards. So we'll just start with section 1 administration, 1.1 findings and purpose. Koochiching County Board makes the following legislative findings. The purpose of this ordinance is to implement the provisions of Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 342, which authorizes Koochiching County Board to protect the public health, safety, welfare of Koochiching County residents by regulating cannabis businesses within the legal boundaries of Koochiching County. Koochiching County Board finds and concludes that the proposed provisions are appropriate and lawful land use regulations for Koochiching County, that the proposed amendments will promote the community's interest in reasonable stability in zoning for now and in the future, and that proposed provisions are in the public interest and for the public good. 1.2 Authority and Jurisdiction. Koochiching County Board has authority to adopt this ordinance pursuant to Minnesota Statute 342.13C regarding the authority of a local unit of government to adopt reasonable restrictions for the time, place, and manner of the operation of cannabis business, provided that such restrictions do not prohibit the establishment or operation of cannabis businesses. Minnesota Statute 342.22 regarding the local registration and enforcement requirements of state licensed cannabis retail businesses and lower potency hemp edible retail businesses. Minnesota Statute 152.0263 Subdivision 5 regarding the use of cannabis in public places. And Minnesota Statute 462.357 regarding the authority of the local authority to adopt zoning ordinances. Ordinance shall be applicable to the legal boundaries of Koochiching County. As previously outlined, cities within Koochiching County may delegate cannabis retail registration authority to Koochiching County. However, these cities may adopt ordinances under sections 2.6, 3, and 4, but Koochiching County has not adopted any provisions. 1.3 Severability. In any section, clause, provision, or portion of this ordinance is adjudged unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remainder of the ordinance shall not be affected thereby. 1.4 Enforcement. Koochiching County Administration is responsible for the administration of this ordinance. The Koochiching County Sheriff is responsible for the enforcement of this ordinance, and Koochiching County Public Health shall be responsible for compliance checks of those holding county cannabis retail business registrations. Any violation of the provisions of this ordinance or failure to comply with any of its requirements constitutes a misdemeanor and is punishable as defined by law. Violations of this ordinance can occur regardless of whether or not a permit is required for a regulated activity listed in this ordinance. 1.5 is definitions, and all these definitions came right out of the statute. So I'll read them, but these weren't Koochiching County's definitions. And then unless otherwise noted in the section, words and phrases contained in Minnesota Statute 342.01 and rules promulgated pursuant to any other of these acts shall have the same meaning in this ordinance. Cannabis cultivation. The cannabis business license to grow cannabis plants within the cannabis flower from mature plant, packaged and labeled with mature plants and seedlings and cannabis flower for sale to other cannabis businesses, transport cannabis flower to a cannabis manufacturer located on the same premises, and perform other actions approved by the office. Cannabis delivery cites the statute, Minnesota Statute 342.41, and then cannabis delivery operations by 342.42. Cannabis manufacturer per Minnesota Statute 342.31. Cannabis retail business, a retail location, and retail locations for meso businesses with a retail operations endorsement, micro businesses with a retail operations endorsement, medical combination businesses operating a retail location, and / excluding lower potency hemp edible retailers. Cannabis retailer, any person, partnership, firm, corporation, or association, foreign or domestic, selling cannabis products to a consumer and not for the purpose of resale in any form. Cannabis transportation, defined per Minnesota Statute 342.35, and cannabis transportation operations by Minnesota Statute 342.36. Daycare is defined as a location licensed with the Minnesota Department of Human Services to provide care of a child in a residence outside the child's own home for gain or otherwise on a regular basis for any part of a 24-hour day. I have manufacturers defined by Minnesota Statute 324.45. Lower potency hemp edible is any product that is intended to be eaten or consumed as a beverage by humans that contains hemp concentrate or an artificially derived cannabinoid in combination with food ingredients that is not a drug, that consists of servings that contain no more than 5 milligrams of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, 25 milligrams of cannabidiol, 25 milligrams of cannabidiol, or any combination of those cannabinoids that does not exceed the identified amounts. That does not contain more than a combined total of 0.5 milligrams of cannabinoids per serving. That does not contain an artificially derived cannabinoid or other than delta-9, tough words, tetrahydrocannabinol. That does not contain a cannabinoid derived from cannabis plants or cannabis flower, and is a type of product approved for sale by the office, or it's substantially similar to a product approved by the office, including but not limited to products that resemble non-alcoholic beverages, candy, and baked goods. The Office of Cannabis Management is a Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management, referred to as OCM in this ordinance. A public place of accommodation, a business, accommodation, refreshment, entertainment, recreation, or transportation facility of any kind, whether licensed or not, whose goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, or accommodations are extended, offered, sold, or otherwise made available to the public. Preliminary license approval, OCM pre-approval for a cannabis business license for applicants who qualify under Minnesota Statute 342.17. Public place, public park or trail, public streets or sidewalk, any enclosed indoor area used by general public, including but not limited to restaurants, bars, any other food or liquor establishment, hospitals, nursing homes, auditoriums, arenas, gyms, meeting rooms, common areas for rental apartment buildings, and other places of public accommodation. Residential treatment facility, as defined under Minnesota Statute 245.462, subdivision 23. Retail registration, an approved registration issued by Koochiching County to a state licensed cannabis retail business. School is a public school as defined under Minnesota Statute 128.05, or a non-public school that must meet the reporting requirements under Minnesota Statute 128.24. State license, an approved license issued by the state of Minnesota's Office of Cannabis Management to a cannabis retail business. Wholesaler for Minnesota Statute 342.33 and operations by Minnesota Statute 342.34. Section 2, registration of cannabis businesses, and 2.1, registration of cannabis business required. No individual or entity may operate a state licensed cannabis retail business within Koochiching County without first registering with Koochiching County. Any state licensed cannabis retail business that sells to a customer or patient without valid retail registration shall incur a civil penalty of $2,000 for each violation. Notwithstanding the foregoing provisions, the state shall not issue a license to any cannabis business to operate in Indian country as defined in the United States Code Title 18, Section 1151 of the Minnesota tribal government without the consent of the tribal government. 2.2, compliance checks prior to retail registration. Prior to issuance of cannabis retail business registration, Koochiching County Public Health and Human Services shall conduct a preliminary compliance check to ensure compliance with local ordinances. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 342, within 30 days of receiving a copy of a state license application from OCM, Koochiching County shall certify on a form provided by OCM whether a proposed cannabis retail business complies with local zoning ordinances and, if applicable, whether the proposed business complies with the state fire and building code. 2.3 Registration and application procedure. 2.31 Fees. A registration fee is established in Koochiching County's fee schedule shall be charged to applicants depending on the type of retail business applied for. An initial retail registration fee shall not exceed $500 or half the amount of an initial state license fee under Minnesota Statute 342.11, whichever is less. The initial registration fee shall include the initial retail registration fee and the first annual renewal fee. Any renewal registration fee imposed by Koochiching County shall be charged at the time of the second renewal of each subsequent renewal thereafter. An annual renewal retail registration fee shall not exceed $1,000 or half the amount of the renewal state license fee under Minnesota Statute 342.11, whichever is less. A medical combination business operating an adult use retail location may only be charged a single registration fee, not to exceed the lesser of a single retail registration fee, defined under this section of the adult use retail business. 2.3.2 Application submittal. Koochiching County shall issue a retail registration to a state licensed cannabis retail business that adheres to the requirements of Minnesota Statute 342.22. An applicant for a retail registration shall fill out an application form as provided by Koochiching County. Said form shall include, but not limited to, full name and property owner and applicant, address, email address, and telephone number of the applicant, the address and parcel ID for the property which the retail registration is sought, certification that the applicant complies with the requirements of local ordinances established pursuant to Minnesota Statute 342.13, certification provided by the county auditor that the applicant is current on all property taxes and assessments at the location where the retail establishment is located. The applicant shall include with the form the registration fee as required in section 2.3.1, a copy of the valid state license or written notice from OCM, license pre-approval. If operator is a business entity, evidence of the business registration of the Minnesota Secretary of State, evidence of adequate coverage by commercial liability insurance, which shall meet the following minimum limits of liability: 1.5 million each occurrence, 3 million general aggregate, and 3 million products and completed operations aggregate. Once an application is considered complete, the County Administration Department shall inform the applicant as such, process the registration fee, and forward the application for Koochiching County License Committee for review and recommendation to the Koochiching County Board of Commissioners for approval or denial. The registration fee shall be non-refundable once processed. 2.3.3 Application approval. A state licensed cannabis retail business application may be approved if the cannabis retail business will exceed the maximum number of registration cannabis retail businesses permitted under section 2.6. A state licensed cannabis retail business application shall not be approved or renewed if the applicant is unable to meet the requirements of this ordinance. 2.3.4 Annual compliance checks. Koochiching County Public Health and Human Services shall complete a minimum of 1 compliance check per calendar year of every cannabis business to assess if the business meets age verification requirements as required under Minnesota Statute 342.22 subdivision 4B and Minnesota Statute 342.24 and this ordinance. The Koochiching County Public Health and Human Services shall conduct a minimum 1 unannounced age verification compliance check at least once per calendar year. Age verification compliance check shall involve persons at least 17 years of age but under the age of 21, who with prior written consent of a parent or guardian, if the person is under the age of 18, attempt to purchase adult use cannabis flower, adult use cannabis products, lower potency hemp edibles, and hemp-derived consumer products under the direct supervision of a law enforcement officer or employee of the local unit of government. Any failures under this section must be reported to the Office of Cannabis Management. 2.3.5, location change. A state licensed cannabis retail business shall be required to submit a new application for registration under section 2.3.2 if it seeks to move to a new location still within the legal boundaries of Koochiching County. 2.4, renewal of registration. Koochiching County shall renew an annual registration of a state licensed cannabis retail business at the same time OCM renews the cannabis retail business license. A state licensed cannabis retail business shall apply to renew registration form established by Koochiching County. The cannabis retail registration issued in this ordinance shall not be transferred. 2.4.1 renewal fees. Koochiching County charge renewal fee for registration starting at the second renewal as established in Koochiching County's fee schedule. 2.4.2 renewal application. The application for renewal of a retail registration shall include, but is not limited to, all the items required under section 2.3.2 of this ordinance. 2.4.3 history of compliance. By way of its renewal application, the applicant shall consent to the release by OCM to the county of the state's historical compliance records related to applicant's business. Any record related to compliance from OCM from county performed compliance checks shall be taken into account when renewal is considered. 2.5 suspension of registration. Koochiching County is authorized to suspend and reinstate retail registrations for cannabis businesses and hemp businesses under certain circumstances. The License Committee shall be responsible for making recommendations to the Koochiching County Board as to any suspension or reinstatement of a retail registration issued by Koochiching County. And Koochiching County Board shall be responsible for taking action on any such suspension or reinstatement. 2.5.1, when suspension is warranted, Koochiching County may suspend a cannabis retail business's registration if it violates the ordinance of Koochiching County or state law or possesses an immediate threat to the health or safety of the public. Koochiching County shall immediately notify the cannabis retail business and the grounds for the suspension. 2.5.2, notification to OCM. Koochiching County shall immediately notify the OCM in writing the grounds for the suspension. OCM will provide Koochiching County and the cannabis business retailer a response to the complaint within 7 calendar days and perform any necessary inspections within 30 calendar days. 2.5.3, length of suspension. The suspension of a cannabis retail business registration may be for up to 30 calendar days, unless OCM suspends the license for a longer period. The business may not make sales to customers if the registration is suspended. Excuse me. 2.5.4 civil penalties. Subject to Minnesota Statute 342.22 subdivision 5E, Koochiching County shall impose a civil penalty as specified in the Koochiching County's fee schedule for each registration violation. 2.6, limiting of registrations. If Koochiching County has one active cannabis retail business registration for every 12,500 residents, Koochiching County shall not be required to register additional state licensed cannabis retail businesses. Section 3, requirements for cannabis businesses. 3.1, minimum buffer requirements. Koochiching County shall prohibit the operation of a cannabis business within 1,000 feet of a school or 500 feet of a daycare. Or 500 feet of a daycare, residential treatment facility, or attraction within a public park that is regularly used by minors, including a playground or athletic field. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 462.357, subdivision 1E, nothing in section 3.1 shall prohibit an active cannabis business or a cannabis business seeking registration from continuing operation at the same site if a school, daycare, residential treatment facility, attraction within a public park that is regularly used by minors moves within the minimum buffer zone. 3.2 is zoning and land use. 3.2.1 is cultivation. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for cultivation are permitted as a permitted use in the following zoning districts. AF1, Agriculture and Forestry District. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for cultivation may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. R1, Residential District. 3.2.2 Cannabis Manufacturer. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for cannabis manufacture may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. M1, Manufacturing District. M2, Manufacturing District. AF1, Agricultural Forestry District. 3.2.3 Hemp Manufacturer. Businesses licensed or endorsed for low-potency hemp edible manufacturers may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. M1 Manufacturing District, M2 Manufacturing District, AF1 Agricultural Forestry District. 3.2.4 Wholesale. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for wholesale may be permitted in the following zoning districts. M1 Manufacturing District, M2 Manufacturing District, C1 Commercial District. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for wholesale may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. C2 Commercial District, AF1 Agriculture Forestry District. 3.2.5 Cannabis Retail. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for cannabis retail are permitted as a permitted use in the following zoning districts. C1 Commercial District. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for cannabis retail may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. C2 Commercial District. 3.2.6 Cannabis Transportation. Cannabis transportation. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for transportation are permitted as a permitted use in the following zoning districts. M1 Manufacturing District, M2 Manufacturing District, AF1 Agricultural Forestry District. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for transportation may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. C2 Commercial District. 3.2.7 Cannabis Delivery. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for delivery are permitted as a permitted use in the following zoning districts. C1 Commercial District, M1 Manufacturing District, M2 Manufacturing District. Cannabis businesses licensed or endorsed for delivery may be permitted with approval of a conditional or interim use permit in the following zoning districts. C2 Commercial District. Hours of operation. Cannabis businesses are limited to retail sale of cannabis, cannabis flower, cannabis products, low-potency hemp edibles, or hemp-derived consumer products between the hours of 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. 3.4 Advertising. Cannabis businesses are permitted to erect up to 2 fixed signs on the exterior of the building or property of the business, unless otherwise limited by Koochiching County's zoning ordinance. 3.5 Insurance. Business operations must be adequately covered by commercial liability insurance, which shall meet at least the following minimum limits of liability: 1.5 million each occurrence, 3 million general aggregate, and 3 million products on completed operations aggregate. Section 4 is temporary cannabis events. 4.1 license or permit required for temporary cannabis events. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 342.40, subdivision 1, from the 2024 referendum. As amended or recodified from time to time, a cannabis event organizer must receive Koochiching County's local approval in the form of a cannabis event permit before holding a cannabis event. The cannabis event organizer must pay, at the time of application for the permit, a non-refundable permit fee in the amount of $100. The permit must require the cannabis event organizer to comply with all applicable laws, including, without limitation, Minnesota Statute 342.40, as amended and recodified from time to time. The license committee shall be responsible for taking action on applications for cannabis event permits. Section 5, lower potency hemp edibles, which includes beverages. 5.1, sale of low potency hemp edibles. The sale of lower potency hemp edibles is permitted, subject to the conditions within this section. 5.2, zoning districts. Lower potency hemp edible businesses are permitted as a permitted use in a C1 commercial zoning district. Lower potency edible businesses may be permitted with approval of conditional interim use permit in a C2 commercial zoning district. 5.3, sales within a municipal liquor store. The sale of low potency edibles is permitted in a municipal liquor store. 5.4, storage of product. Low potency hemp edibles meant to be eaten must be stored in a locked case or behind a checkout counter where the public is not permitted, and at least 1 foot separated from conventional candy and gum which can be sold to children. Lower potency hemp beverages must be stored in a location or using a method which provides increased theft prevention compared to non-hemp derived products. For example, top shelved, continuously surveilled by technology or staff, behind the counter and or locked, and in a location labeled clearly as containing products only for purchase/consumption by persons 21 and over. Section 6, local government and the cannabis retailer. Local units of government may establish, own, and operate one municipal cannabis retail business subject to the restrictions in this chapter. The municipal cannabis retail store shall not be included in any limitation under the number of registered cannabis retail businesses under section 2.6. Local units of government shall be subject to all same rental license requirements and procedures applicable to all other applicants. Section 7, use in public places. No person shall use cannabis, flower, cannabis products, lower potency hemp edibles, or hemp-derived consumer products in a public place or a public place accommodation unless the premises is an establishment or an event licensed to permit on-site consumption of adult use. So that concludes the proposed cannabis ordinance. The next 2 pages is a draft of the registration application. And the last page is the proposed cannabis registration and renewal fees. So this is our public hearing for our proposed cannabis ordinance. I think the board, if they have any comments, can make them at this time before the public is available. On the agenda for the county board meeting today is for the board to consider to adopt this ordinance. They may choose to adopt it today. They may choose to table it and research any questions or things that people have. If substantial changes are made to the proposed ordinance, another public hearing will need to be had to receive comment on those changes. So, open to the board.
Thank you, Adam, for that. So just a question I have. A lot of these statute language is directly from the Minnesota statute guidelines.
Correct. Most of the sections were straight out of statute. The ones that we had ability to really control were, I think we had the option if we wanted to do a compliance check prior to registration, which the board and the committee felt strongly that we should make sure they're in compliance for the public health and safety. I believe that the maximum fees are outlined in the statute. We just adopted the fees as listed in the statute. Certainly we could have done less on the fees, I believe. We have a little wiggle room in what we require for registration. Some of this is obviously required to get the information, but we could have added things to that.
Could you go over here specifically the 2.6 limiting of registrations and kind of explain that a little bit further?
Sure, I'm getting there. So 2.6, limiting registration, I know that the committee and the board had quite a bit of discussion on this topic. State statute requires that every county allow one retail establishment per 12,500 residents. And I think each local government as well, unless they defer to the county. So the county has less than 12,000 people currently. We have to allow one per state statute. Any city that were to do an ordinance, my understanding is if they have 500 people or 5,000 people, they would have to allow one as well. So the committee and the board had the option of saying we're not going to limit it at all. We could say we're only going to limit it to one. I think through discussion, because this is all new for all of us, the board obviously had to allow one per state statute. But any registration thereafter, they can choose to approve or deny. So there isn't really a cap. We could have went in and picked an arbitrary number, whether that would be 2 or 12 or that number, but we kind of adopted the language in the middle of saying we'll allow the one per statute. Any registration application thereafter would be up for the board to approve. And I know some of the discussion, I don't want to speak for you guys, but was, if Rainier's delegated authority to us and a registration comes forward for Rainier, there was discussion that we would reach out to the Rainier City Council and say, hey, what's your input on this registration? And that goes such as an example for maybe other communities as well. So that's just for retail. So there's no limit on manufacturing or growing, cultivation, those types of registrations.
Matt, could you explain a little bit about the zoning and how that works? Let's say for wholesale to retail to, I think you probably.
Yeah, so each of the different types of cannabis businesses fit in. When the committee reviewed it, we reviewed it with our planning and zoning commission as well to make the planning and zoning commission review each of the different types of businesses and make recommendations related to the type of business and what land use and what zoning fits to that. So that's how all of the zoning districts were determined. Some are permitted uses in certain zoning districts. Some require a conditional use or interim use permit, which requires a public hearing for that type of business within that zoning district. So again, the Planning and Zoning Commission made those recommendations after reviewing each of the different types of businesses.
I think that maybe speak to the area. If you're in an area that requires a conditional use permit, it would be wise to kind of get that lined up ahead of time along with, before kind of diving into anything, make sure you're in the right area to be able to do this, because there's no guarantee that you'd be awarded a conditional use or an interim use.
That's correct. So just like any land use, if there's a requirement for conditional use or an interim use permit for a particular activity, understanding that when you go into looking at a particular activity, coming into the planning and zoning office and discussing the application with us prior to, making any long-term decisions would be a good idea so that you can understand where is the best place to operate these types of things based on your business plan. So having those discussions beforehand is a good idea, just like any other business. I mean, we have many different activities that occur throughout the county, and anybody that is investing money or has a business plan, it's always good to check with the local zoning authority to find out, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what locations, even if you don't have a property, you could identify properties that might fit for a particular business. So always checking with the local zoning office is a great idea. And like Adam had said, different communities have delegated to the county and others have not. I think the city of International Falls, you mentioned, has not delegated. So they would be their own, they would have their own requirements based on their ordinance. But each city has its own zoning, and they would have to be compliant within each of those cities as well. So county zoning doesn't go with Little Fork or North Home or Rainier. They have their own zoning requirements.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I can
please.
continue to kind of walk through where we had leeway, if you want me to do that.
Sure, go ahead.
So after the zoning section, hours of operation 3.3, there is state statute about, I think, when you cannot sell cannabis. The committee picked 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the cannabis retail business for hours of operation. Advertising, there was leeway there. We kind of took a broad approach to that. As far as temporary cannabis events, certainly we wanted to be aware of where those events would be and make sure that they're registered and are permitted, I should say, and have a good, safe plan for those events. So there was some leeway there. Low potency hemp edibles. Currently, I don't think we registered low potency hemp edible retailers, but the county felt like it was important to register them to know where they're at. I think we have multiple liquor stores, gas stations, maybe restaurants that are serving low potency edibles or beverages. So we want to make sure that we're obligated to ensure the safety and health of the county. So we want to make sure we're aware of where those are at. The storage of low potency hemp edibles. There is some state statute about the edibles. There's not a lot of guidance on beverages. The county felt that beverages should be also stored with, like it says, increased theft prevention. Not just on an end cap at a grocery store where you can, someone can grab them and go. So just to protect the safety, to make sure that they're labeled that, hey, this is 21. If anybody's looked at some of the cans, to me, they could look like lemonade or, a bubbler or something like that too. So we had some leeway on that. I think that's about it. Most of the other stuff's out in statute. And then I did receive one email prior to the public hearing with a concern regarding a person's ability to smoke their medical or medically prescribed marijuana in a public place. And they explained that they were in a public building that the landlord didn't allow them to smoke within the building, or they instructed them to go out to the street. I have responded to that individual to say that, you know, the inability to use cannabis or low potency hemp in a public place isn't a county rule, it's a state rule. And so it is in our ordinance, and there is a page on the OCM website that talks about where can I smoke my medical marijuana. And so there is resources, and it does outline that that can't be done in a public place, to my knowledge. So that was the only comment that I had received prior to this hearing.
Anyone else from the committee have anything to add before we go to public comment?
I just had, on the zoning side of things, the state of Minnesota, before a license is issued by the state, requires certification from the local zoning office of the proper zoning for their proposed license. So that's required by the state. The state, we give that information to the state before they would issue the license.
Thank you. Anybody else from the committee have anything to add? Sure. Board, any comments from the board? Nothing? Okay. All right, at this time we'll open it up for public comments, and we thank you all for being here. And just come on up, state your name for the record, and
Address, name and address, please.
yes, please, name and address. Thank you.
Michael Hernandez, 506 7th Street, International Falls. Good morning, members of the County Board and fellow residents. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on this important matter. I am here to express my concern about the wording of the proposed ordinance that would essentially limit marijuana retail licenses to just one. As in Sections 2.6, limiting of registrations if Koochiching County has one active cannabis retail business registration for every 12,500 residents. Koochiching County shall not be required to register additional state licensed cannabis retail businesses. I believe this would inadvertently create a monopoly, stifling competition and limiting economic growth to our county. Restricting licenses to a single entity would concentrate power in the hands of one business, reducing consumer choice and potentially driving up prices. Monopolies often lead to complacency and little incentive for innovation and improvement. By allowing multiple licenses, we foster healthy competition, which benefits consumer thought through better products, services, and pricing. Moreover, introducing an ordinance with limit on marijuana license without limits on marijuana licenses could bring significant economic advantages to our community. It would encourage local entrepreneurs to enter the market, creating jobs and stimulating economic activity. Small businesses are the backbone of our community, and this approach would empower them to thrive in a new and growing industry. Additionally, a diverse and competitive marijuana market could generate substantial tax revenue for the county. These funds could be reinvested into public by public services such as education, infrastructure, and healthcare, improving the quality of life for all residents. From a public health perspective, a competitive market ensures that a business prioritizes quality and safety standards to attract customers. This reduces the risk of substandard or unsafe products entering the market, protecting consumers and promoting responsible use. Finally, limiting licenses could inadvertently encourage illegal marijuana sales. As demand may exceed supply, by allowing multiple licenses, we can ensure that the market is adequately served, reducing the incentive for black market activity and enhancing public safety. In conclusion, I strongly encourage the County Board to reconsider the wording of this ordinance. A great example of a balanced approach I found came from Thief River Falls, where their ordinance states the city of Thief River Falls shall not limit the number of cannabis retail businesses within the city and will always comply with the state statute that allows no fewer than one registration per 12,500 residents. This model fosters competition, supports local businesses, and ensures economic social benefits for the community. The residents of this county already have to travel to Bemidji, to Beltrami, and St. Louis counties for essential purchases. Let's not add to that burden. Instead, let's create an environment where businesses can thrive and residents have access to resources they deserve. thank you for your time, and I hope that you table this measure and work on the wording. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Anyone else? Public comment?
So, I'm Eric Silvers. My comments are mainly on the zoning, and just for like instance, like I've had a license to grow hemp with the MDA for the past 4 years. They come out to my farm, they would inspect my crop, and the land that I was using was fine. Now you would now the land that I was farming on is residential 1. So it would be required to be petitioned to be agriculture. Where I've been farming that land and growing hemp on it with the state's approval for the past 4 years. So you're saying that the zoning, those are guidelines handed down from the state. They're not statute. They're guidelines. And so for instance, I'm sorry, I got nervous. I'm approved for a micro license. What a micro license entails is I could cultivate, I could manufacture, and I could have a retail location. Now, I don't need to have all of those in the same location, but you can see how it would make sense if I had an indoor grow, and it was let's just say it was out in residential 1. Well, now I would also need to get it petitioned that I could do this indoor grow and make that agriculture district area. And then I would have to get possibly another build. You know what I mean? I could manufacture in the same area that I was growing in. You know what I mean? It could all be done in the same premises. But some of these zoning things would make it where you're saying my business would need to get multiple buildings in different zones to do stuff that it sort of seems silly. It's why would I want to get you know what I mean? And the thing is that the things that you're manufacturing, you're not you know what I mean? You're not doing things like Boise's doing, or I'm not a railroad or something. So it's you're taking things that were already approved, by the state. They're coming out, they're walking through my farm, and now you're saying, well, because we thought about it because of these recommendations for zonings. They're not statutes for zonings. They're recommendations of where you could put things. And you're saying that the area that I'm out there outside of town is there's Crucera's farm, there's all these people that were doing farming out there, but they're doing it all in a residential area, which is approved for farming, and you could have cattle there. I mean, you could do anything you want right there. And I was approved to grow my hemp there. This isn't even about the cannabis. This is about just for me to continue producing CBD, if I were to continue with my hemp license that I've had with the MDA since the beginning. This isn't even about, my other license that I'm approved for a micro license. And I'm just saying, so things like that, you need to think about things like that, where it's I've been out there farming, it was totally legal, and I could still do that this year. I could register at the state right now to farm my hemp out there, and they're not going to have any problems. They're going to walk out there, and they're not going to have any problems with any of this. But now all of a sudden, I need to come here and I need to apply for to change the residential 1 to an agriculture district. To start my season right now, you're saying I need to do that. I need to try to get it rezoned, and then after I get it rezoned, then maybe I could farm again there. But I've been farming there for 4 years. It's been totally fine. You know what I mean? So it's some of these things, you're with the zoning, you're saying that imagine if I put up all the money up there and I did everything I needed to do and I got it and I put up this huge building, and then all of a sudden I need to manufacture in a separate area possibly, or the retail, definitely not there. The retail needs to be in a commercial zone. And what some of these people haven't seen is they haven't seen the map of where the zoning is. So I actually know where commercial zoning is, and there's very few, correct? It's a very, very small little niches of area. For instance, Boondocks would be a commercial zone, correct? I think it's around that area. So the areas that are actually commercial zones where you're referring to having a retail store, they're very small. They're very limited and very small. And a lot of those places, there's also not going to be a building present. So it's I'm waiting on the City of International Falls, and I'm assuming they're going to do something very similar to what you're doing. And if you were to push me into a manufacturing district in the city, you're going to force me into an area where there are no buildings. It's the same thing for the county. where I could leave the county and I could leave the city and I could go to a town like Grand Rapids, and there are those buildings there. They're all there. You know what I mean? Like I could leave and I could start applying with, and I'm born and raised in International Falls. I could leave and I could like try to do everything I've been planning on doing, lawfully, like down there, because like the buildings are there, you know what I mean? And I have an early mover advantage. I have a social equity license. So like they want us to start like right now. And I'm like, so some of these zonings, like for like the city, it's going to possibly make me move to an area where there's absolutely nothing there. I'd have to put up a building. We're talking like I'm a year out, you know what I mean? Where it's, you know what I mean? And I have an early mover advantage, a social equity license. Where it's, so like I just wanted you guys to think about some of that. Some of these zonings, like, you're imagining like, one business and another, and a manufacturing and like they're cultivating over here and then they have a retail over here. When that could possibly have been all done in one space. And these are just recommendations. And it's like, and when you're making the recommendations for the zoning, it's like, you need to also think about what you're protecting people from. Like, you know what I mean? Like if I were manufacturing and growing in the same place, what were you protecting? What would be the reason why they would need to be separated or something? You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't they be under the same building? Because the state is fully, like, prepared to come and, like, you know what I mean? I know what we have to go through for licensing. I know what the state requires, and it's heavy, you know what I mean? They are, like, they're going to be, like, heavy-handed, and they're looking through every little thing that you have, you know what I mean? So it's like, and they would be okay with that. They're not arguing about the zoning. Like, they're not arguing about it has to be an agriculture zone or it has to be in a They're saying this is what it could be, and I need to go make sure it's okay with you guys before I move forward. And so I've been waiting on this because we've been approved for a while. And I'm like, and I have met and talked with you guys, and you guys are really, everything I'm hearing today, none of this is new to me. It's just the zoning. I just wanted you to like take into consideration the zoning that like some of the times you're asking, you're asking what could be like one business, like, to be like separated by a whole bunch of stuff. Like nobody would ask Boise to like separate every individual thing that they do into like different locations because of zoning. It's like, nope, we can do it all here. And I mean, and they have a bleach plant in the middle of town. You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, that was my piece. Like, I appreciate you guys.
Okay, thank you.
I am Matt Winskowski. I am the owner of the Midwest Ave Cabin on Main Street, 328 3rd Street, I believe is what it is. Have a couple things. Like he said, the zoning. I would like to be grandfathered in if this does get approved because I already have been in business for almost a year downtown. I'm not 100% sure if that's in the C1 or C2. I don't know what the map looks like. Do one of you guys maybe know?
Downtown International Falls?
Yeah, it's on...
So we don't zone for International Falls.
Okay.
Just outside the city limits is what the county zones for. So you have
Oh,
to
okay.
city for zoning, here in the city limits.
Oh, okay. Well, then that really doesn't bother me then. But yeah, the zoning thing should be changed a little bit because people should be able to come in, I do believe. Personally, we have the low potency hemp already. Is that something that you guys are also going to control through the city of International Falls, or is that something I have to go through them for also?
I think they take care of their own licensing.
Okay.
Because I believe, and Kelly's here, and I'll even let him speak to that if he wants to.
Yeah.
He's
Basically, just to answer, we're working on the policies right now. Very similar to what Koochiching is working on, that's why I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Basically, to see, we like to stay pretty close to compliance with them.
Yeah.
Because they did meet the statutes and did a very good job of what they did so far.
Okay.
And if we can keep it in compliance with them, it's better for everybody, better for enforcement, better for...
Yeah. All right, so then I'll go into the second thing then. Like I said, I own the Midwest Ave Cabin. We started this, me and my wife, 5 years ago in Park Rapids, Minnesota, out of our salon with a $700 investment that was just a little tiny section in our salon because we were both hairstylists. We've grown that now into 4 companies. We support over 12 families with our company. We are 100% compliant. We are probably the only compliant smoke shop in the probably Minnesota, because when everything went that they couldn't have smokables, edibles, all that stuff, we got rid of everything and went down to the 5 to 10 milligram drinks. Everybody else, Bemidji, other smoke shops all over the place, still were selling outrageous amounts of 5,000 milligram gummies, 500 milligram drinks. And we had to comply with the Minnesota regulation because we didn't want to get fined. So we did that, but we also are different in a way that we don't sell anything that's actually going to harm people. We come to small communities without the nasty stuff that smoke shops have. So the crack pipes, the whippets, the little charger things that people, the NOS gas or whatever they want to call it, kratom, any of those things that actually hurt people or you can get addicted to, we don't sell out of our store. So you're not going to have a meth pipe in your park, because I also have 5 children. I wanted to start something that I could feel good about telling my kids that, hey, this is what we do for a living. Not, hey kids, we made some money today, but I think we might have also contributed to a death on the street. You know, I don't want to be that person. So we made a vow that we would never sell those things. And that's one thing that I would like to be a part of, maybe making a rule or a law or something like that to be able to outlaw those items in your town. Because if another smoke shop comes into your town, they will sell that stuff. And I could give you a rough number of how much money I probably could have made last year, and it would blow your mind. But we're not going to go there, because it's not about money for me, it's about saving the communities, basically, helping them have the products that they need without having to drive 2 to 3 hours away to get them. So that's why I came to your guys' community. It was to help your guys' community and not hurt it. And I just wanted everybody to know that. So it's not, oh God, a smoke shop, because I get discriminated against hard, trying to find a building, trying to do this. But I was very fortunate to meet Roma. He had to go back to work. And I struck up a conversation with him because I tried to get one in Moore Road, and they basically told me to kick rocks. And I was on the phone with my wife driving, and she goes, just leave it in God's hands. And I said, all right, I'll do it again. And then I drove straight over to I Falls and found a building that day, struck up a deal with Roma, got everything set up, started working in your guys' town, and I absolutely love it. Our customers that come in, yes, we do have that person that wants the meth pipe or wants this or wants that, but I refuse to carry those things, so then all of a sudden we don't see those people anymore. We have customers like you guys that come in there and ask for gummies, asking for a drink because their friend said that it helped with their arthritis and maybe that'll help with their sleep. And that's where we get our satisfaction, is by helping that part of the community to make sure that you guys have the education and the knowledge, instead of, here, take this and go home. So thank you guys very much for letting us come into your town and giving us licenses and everything in the first place, and we really appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment, come on up, please.
Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is Carrie Taylor. I was born and raised in International Falls. I am currently the CEO of the Red Lake Adult Use Cannabis Corporation, known as Native Care. I've been in the cannabis industry for over 20 years. While this may be new to you all here in Minnesota, it's something I've spent a long time working in. Being an herbalist and detoxification specialist, I've served over 4,000 medical patients, custom compounding and things like that. What I would like to advise or advocate for within this ordinance is a few things. One, the outright ban of public use. simply because the statute has a little more freedom than what this ordinance currently does, and perhaps pointing to the statute rather than an outright ban is a better option, simply because it creates a problem for law enforcement. If you have tourists, and we do have a lot of tourists that come up here to the lakes and things like that, it creates a situation where it's legal to buy it but not legal to use it. And to me, that creates a problem. And so if it could be that it points to the statute because the statute is going to be evolving and changing at times, it at least creates consistency within the state so that people know where to look for it. And you know, if each county is different, that creates a problem for the individual to have to look up statute or to look up ordinances and see, you know, what they can do in different locations, right? And so that's one thing that I would want to bring up. So far in Minnesota, there haven't been major problems as far as public use and consumption. I've seen, living in California and Washington for over 20 years, that public consumption, people are respectful in most cases. It's not something that they're going to go stand over by your children and smoke. So that's just one thing that I see within the ordinance. And I also wanted to speak to the one dispensary per 12,500. I've always been an advocate for the small farmer and for craft cannabis rather than multi-state operators growing fields of one particular kind of cannabis, simply because people have different needs when it comes to cannabis. And if you're not a cannabis user, you might not understand what the differences are between strains and things like that. And so medically, it is very different for some people to have one strain versus another, and that's where having an entrepreneur who really understands what this herb is really important. And so I would encourage the county to consider favoring the small businesses that want to cultivate here, the micro businesses, rather than the giant retailers who come in who are largely in it for the sales. While they are contributing to the tax base on the retail sales of those, they're not people who live in the community necessarily and who, you know, are here understanding, you know, how to cultivate it and to speak to it from the heart of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so those would be the comments that I would wish to put forth, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else? Public comment? The last call, public comment. Anyone else? Online, is there anyone for public comment?
I will have to unmute them.
Okay, again, I'll ask, is there anybody online for public comment? Right, okay, I will consider public comment closed. And thank you all for your comments, and if you want to stick around when we get to this item in our agenda, it is item, it's not too far down the list, so it's item 5 under county business, so we'll actually be there quite quick. If you want to hang out for about 5 minutes, we'll kind of get to that. We'll have more discussion and we'll make a decision there whether to adopt or to table and reconsider now and then move forward. So, but thank you very much for being here too. With that, I will close the public hearing, and we will get into our regular board meeting for Koochiching County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. All right, welcome everyone. And under county business, first order of business is to approve a proposed agenda with additions and/or deletions. Do we have any other additions or deletions?
I do not.
No additions or deletions. Chair would accept the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And motion carries. Next up is to approve the minutes from the April 8th, 2025 regular meeting.
I'll move.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Thank you. Next up is financial business. Chair would accept the motion for items A, B, and C, which are approved courthouse claims, approved highway claims, and approved public health and human services claims. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Next up is to approve warrants. I believe we have two. One for 50 and one for 276. 186, right. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Affidavits are on file for these, by the way.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Any discussion on the voids? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. Human resource business. We have a few notices and then one approval of a separation. Hi, Brian.
Good morning, Commissioners. All right, so I'm going to start off with 4A, notice of hiring a veteran services transport driver. Effective April 8th, it'll be Eric Nilsson.
Thank you, Eric. And welcome.
And moving on to 4B, notice of hire full-time appraiser trainee Bailey Hagan, replacing Tracy Harmoning's position from the fall. No backfill required. Her effective date will be April 28th, 2025.
And welcome to Bailey. Thank you.
Move on to 4C. We've hired Aiden June as a temporary seasonal highway laborer. His effective start date is May 27, 2025.
And welcome to Mr. June.
And then under 4D, we approve the employment separation retirement of Brown Promersberger from EDS Accountant 2 position as of July 11, 2025. There is a request to post now and have someone start and train before Brenda retires.
All right. Wishes of the board.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Roach. Seconded by Commissioner Howell. Will that be posted internally prior to going out to the public?
It'll go concurrently.
It can go.
We will only entertain internal candidates through the CBA language of 5 business days.
Okay, sounds good. And this is just for this position, not for any position that's backfilled?
The intention is if there is an internal candidate that wants this position, that we will look at the position at that point in time and see if it's needed or if we can do something else.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I'd like to have a second approval of that if it's possible. So,
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? thank you, Brenda, for her years of service here for the county and a couple of different departments that she were. So I know that she brings a lot to Matt's office, and we appreciate her service. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. And motion carries. Next up, let's consider adopting Koochiching County Cannabis Ordinance. We just had that public hearing, so it should be fairly fresh in our minds. And I think we'll also, I'll find my paper now. So some of the concerns were the licensing. I think that was a kind of a concern over the theme of a concern that we are allowing one license per 12,500 people and not having an unlimited license. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but I don't think that that limits us to just one license. I think that limits us to requiring us to have one for certain and requires approval beyond that. I guess, and if that, does that sound accurate to what I was? That's not accurate.
Mr. Chair.
No, I understand that's not the intent of the language,
Well,
but.
that is the intent of the language.
Yeah, so that we have the approvals beyond that, the intent of it is to remove that so it's unlimited. So we can have.
The language needs to be fixed because the way it's written, it doesn't say it will come and be approved and, you guys choose or decide which family or whoever gets another license, you know what I mean? So I don't agree with that wording of it. Because that's the state statute, yeah, but the wording of it, no. I don't agree with that. If you guys want to pick an arbitrary number of, if you don't want to say unlimited, if you want to say 10, I don't know how many, for the county.
Right.
But, it has to be some kind of number, and then it has to be, if you're going to put a number on it, then what happens if the county does, in fact, grow,
Well, and I'm not going to speak for everybody here at the board, but I kind of how I'm seeing this is if the local communities that ceded their authority to this board don't want it at their place, I think that's maybe the reason for that, is so they have some local control, we have some local control. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. If the community says, hey, yeah, let's fire up, I want to do this, great. If that community does not, well, then I would like to respect the wishes of that community. And I think that maybe, and I don't know maybe if that's not appropriate or not. I mean, I know you want to not have it unlimited, but if a community doesn't want this, I think that would fall underneath the realm of that. I mean, I don't know that they do or don't. I'm not saying that they do or don't. But I know they did see some of that regulatory control, and I think that's more of some kind of paperwork because they don't actually have policing in certain areas, so they have to kind of turn this over to the county sheriff and the enforcement, which would be the zoning. They have their own internal zoning and stuff, but anything outside the city limits goes to Matt anyway.
So how many cities have already delegated that they want you to have control of the licensing?
I think Rainier we have officially accepted Rainier's, and I think we have one on the agenda today for Norfolk.
So the problem is, say Rainier wants to put one over there, and your guys' wording, what happens if they want to put one in Norfolk? I goes, you guys don't have to approve it. It doesn't say you have to approve it on the thing. You know what I mean? You're not obligated to give them more than one license. So Norfolk will be out of luck.
Yeah, if you want to come on, we can have this be an open discussion. We want to get it right, and if we can't, we get it right today. We'll get it right on the next time that we meet. So
I'm just
we don't want to be confrontational. We want to get it right.
Oh yeah, I know. Just for instance, North Home, they want to do something over there. Somebody that's out of town wants to do artisanal marijuana establishment. You know what I mean? And what if somebody else in Northland wants to do that? It doesn't say in the language that you have to give another license. You're only required one.
Yes.
The language needs to be addressed.
Well, again, I'm not going to speak for those communities. I don't represent Northland or Little Fork or Big Falls. But what if they don't want that? How do we control that?
Can they not get out of that your agreement at any time and create their own ordinances, if that is the case?
If that community so desires, they could do that. I think the idea of having the one is to give that approval authority to this board. And I'm not saying that they couldn't do it on their own. Their zoning is going to dictate where this stuff's going to happen anyway to a certain extent, but it's not going to prohibit it. But the idea of us approving something that community doesn't want, I think is kind of where I'm having trouble.
But you have to know if they don't want it or not.
Well, exactly.
Because they're letting you handle it, does that mean that they don't want it? Like,
well, with the process that we would have currently as it's written, would be a public process. It wouldn't be a closed-up process. It wouldn't be just this board. I mean, I think we would have to have a public, and if we have a public hearing and have it up for approval, the public has an opportunity to speak on that. I mean, that's part of the public part of it, to whereas it doesn't just get a license automatically, I guess, is the point of it. So it's not to prohibit or to stop or to prevent, but if the community truly doesn't want that, or if the majority of the citizens of that community don't want that in their community, I mean, I guess it's kind of...
They could request an ordinance.
Exactly. I mean, I'm kind of looking at like, and I won't speak for the city of International Falls, but they have a certain amount of liquor licenses. They don't have to approve anymore if they don't want to. Is that correct, Kelly? Would that be... So if you have 8 and you're going to have a limit of 8, you don't have to have 9. Or if you have 6 and you say, well, I don't want any more than 6, because that's all there is here now, then they'll change that limit of 8 to 6. You follow me? And that's the only thing, I guess, is what I'm trying to explain is if they don't want that, what do we do? Do we approve it here because you want to put a business there, but they don't? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's just I don't feel that you. In the wording is you can or well, he said you can or cannot approve. Well, the wording doesn't say any of that. You know what I mean? It's just I read it out to you. I read what it says. It just says you're only required to do one.
But there is
it doesn't
process,
say you're
there
required.
Is a process for more. So that does not mean that there isn't going to be more or cannot be more. There's a process to follow for that. I mean, it's not a
and
no absolutely.
The board gets to pick and choose who not. Like what would the denial be like if you were to deny somebody just because you didn't want one, say for instance in North Home or Rainier?
That North Home didn't want it or Rainier didn't want it.
So they would petition you to not do it. So, yeah.
Pretty much.
So the power would be in your guys' hands.
Well, if the community doesn't want it, I guess I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if they don't
want it, they could put an ordinance in that community.
Well, I don't know that they can actually do that legally. I'm not sure that they can or can't do that. I think we can't deny it.
That'd be something I'd have to research because I'm pretty sure. Like I was looking at Little Fork, they have ordinances, so I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
The small towns could.
Every level of local government has the ability to make their ordinance, so if they so choose.
Yeah.
So the statute allows them to delegate to the highest level of authority in the county, which is us. And, I've received 3 city resolutions, and we're waiting like 2 more, but they haven't passed it yet. So. Our one, if International Falls says we're going to do 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, that wouldn't count against our one.
No, that is not.
We don't govern the city of International Falls if it has an ordinance.
Yeah, their ordinance may be different than ours.
Yeah.
They have to have a secondary approver as well.
I know they'll have their own ordinance. That's a different fight.
Yeah, they may.
But I'm fighting for the rest of the county and the future. And any entrepreneur that wants to do anything they want and it's legal, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's why I'm bringing up this concern.
Right. No, I understand. And I hear you. And maybe it would be nice to hear those community concerns, I guess, too. And maybe that's a consideration to hear what those communities, what that means to them to give that authority to the board. Does that connect them to not wanting, or is that delegating that decision? That's they still got to have a say so in the matter. Obviously, they should have a say so in what they want or don't want.
But because they're giving you delegation is not meaning that they don't want it in their community. So they just want the burden off of them.
Right.
So
I hear you. Thank you. There was some discussion about limiting license as well, and I'll go through it. I don't know if Eric's not here, but maybe it wasn't even that. It was the illicit sales, if there isn't enough of these dispensaries or businesses in our community. Another reason to not limit licensing. The one thing I guess I don't understand a lot about is a micro license, and I don't know if Eric's still here or not. That was some of the questions I had, I guess, was the grow up, the manufacturer, and the sell part of it. I don't know if anybody can speak to that.
They have a mezzo license and a micro license, and they allow you to do multiple things combined together. Mezzo allows them to have multiple retail establishments. Doesn't always have to be, because they're licensed to the state, right? So yes, a big corporation would say licensed to the state. For a mezzo business, and I could have shops in 6 different counties. The micro business combines it with one retail shop, is my understanding. That I can grow, I can manufacture, and I can sell with one retail shop, is my understanding. I don't have a definition in front of me, I think, and Matt can speak to the zoning better than I can.
That was going to be the next question. Then it was, the idea of getting the required licensures for the zoning area to be able to do that, I think was Eric's concern.
Right, we had that discussion with him about zoning. The zoning was established in 1975 throughout the county, and it's had various locations that had the zoning where somebody changed the zoning for a particular use. I'm certainly not a speaker, so they won't. Sorry about that. This point related to, say, an R1 district that allows agricultural use versus an AF1 that also allows an agricultural use. But in the ordinance, I think we identified R1 as a use for a cannabis business to be a conditional use or an interim use permit process or public process. And I think the Planning and Zoning Commission's thought process was to allow for a public process, to allow neighbors to have an ability to understand what that business is going to be doing at the location so that, they would have an opportunity to provide input instead of making it a permitted use where they have no input. And so it allows for the public to engage before, that activity occurs. So the unknowns, right? I mean, so many unknowns about what is cannabis, how does it affect people, when there's a business in a location, and, what kind of impacts it might have. So R1 district, it's a residential district. If somebody has a family, to allow them to have that opportunity to comment in a public process, I think that was a thought process. And that's just one district. There's a lot of both. In this ordinance, it talks about different uses in different zoning districts. And again, the Planning and Zoning Commission selected a particular zoning or a conditional use permit or interim use permit process based on a particular business or activity that might occur in that zoning district.
Then there were.
There's one more comment that I'll make on that. In the commenter's comment, he had said, well, I might have to change my zoning if I want to do the things that I'm thinking about doing. And that is a process you can go through to change your zoning. You make an application to change the zoning. It's a public process, and it allows for the neighborhood to communicate any concerns or support of the particular activity, but allows for that opportunity for public engagement so that this board, when they make a decision on it, will fully understand how that neighborhood feels or how those people that are concerned feels.
Well, that is the public process, so I think that's a good point. I'll bring this up. I don't know if it's going to pertain to this ordinance necessarily. There was some concern about some paraphernalia. Different types of paraphernalia that isn't necessarily required for this or to be sold. I don't have a lot of experience with what can or can't be sold or what should or shouldn't be in a shop or a store, and I don't know if that's necessarily a discussion for this ordinance here. Maybe a separate discussion, but maybe not with this here. One other thing I heard, I think, from Carrie was ban of public use in the areas, and I guess, could you explain that a little bit better, please, or a little further? You can come on up, or you can say that, whatever you want.
Please.
Yes, so banning outright public use creates a situation where it's legal to buy it, but not legal to use it anywhere. And so, sure, if you live in this community, you can use it in your home, but Minnesota actually does allow for some public consumption, and so pointing to the statute might be a better way to keep it fluid and kind of defer that so that you're not creating a spot where, it's a tourist trap, say, or entrapment of like, I have this, but I can't use it anywhere. This happened in Oregon with hotels and things like that where, people were like, can I get a smoking room? And then they made you sign a thing that said, if you use cannabis within this room, it's $500 or $1,000 and things like that. And so it's not about, it's more about having the person be able to understand what the law is throughout the state of Minnesota. I understand that, each community has the right to make their own restrictions regarding it, but that does make a difficult thing for the consumer as well as for law enforcement. It creates targets and potentially discrimination and other things like that.
Would you see this kind of blending in with, say, places that sell alcohol?
How do you mean?
Well, would this be part of an extra license that if you wanted to go to one of the bars in town, that this would be allowed, or underneath a separate license under the same roof? Would that be something that's a possibility?
No, the state has taken a pretty strict stance as far as the combination of cannabis and alcohol, which is actually kind of hypocritical considering hemp and alcohol is okay. And 2 hemp drinks are the same as 1 cannabis drink. So, it's a not very consistent situation. With the events licensing and things like that, they don't want to see any alcohol at cannabis events. And so it's more about, if you're alone somewhere in public and being able to use it without that being, say, a crime, or having it be at least something negligible, like, we're just going to tell you to put it out or move on, but defining what is the consequence for public use.
Yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that as well, because kind of it would go hand in hand, especially if you're at an event or a special event or even a licensed event. It would be hard to kind of separate those two things for me. When I look at if it's alcohol, if you can walk around on the street drinking alcohol, well then you should be able to do that. And if you can't do that, well then maybe you shouldn't be able to do that either.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but at events that are licensed for that type of deal, I guess I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't. Maybe if it's got 2 separate areas, well then so be it. But
the cannabis events license, I don't know if you've read the language around that, but it's not something you're going to see much, if any, of here in this area. The requirements for surveillance and all of the other things that are a part of that event license are incredibly significant. And the Legacy Cup, which is going to be putting on potentially the first cannabis event in Minnesota in September, is looking at probably $150,000 just to surveil the event, according to the way it's all written out. And so that's not something you're really going to see a whole lot of, at least initially, until the laws around that sort of relax and change. Minnesota's been very specific in how it's written out those conditions. And one thing I wanted to go back to where you were talking about the micro business real quick, if you don't mind if I do that. So a micro business is a license that allows an individual or group, potentially, a small canopy space as well as one retail license and the ability to do some packaging and things like that. It doesn't necessarily allow them to do transport and other things like that. And so if your zoning is such that you can grow only in one space and sell in another and you can't transport in between, you're creating the need for another license, to serve as the whole intent, I think, of the micro business was to be a self-sufficient one location entity that is a small craft business. And so if your zoning makes it such that you can only sell in the commercial district but you can't grow and process there, that creates the need for that business to bring on distributors, transporters, and things like that, which creates additional cost for those businesses. And those businesses are going to have a hard time making ends meet anyway in the beginning because of the initial cost of entry. The cost of entry is very significant, and the cameras needed, the security needed, the consulting and operations, SOPs and things like that need to be put into place to even get a license. Make it very difficult for a small farmer to make it. And that's why I typically advocate for those small farmers, because those are the people that live in your community. And I think are a better representation of contributing to the community tax base and things like that. There are people that live here. Not to say that there's not a place for other entities. So a meso business then allows for 3 locations of sale, as well as 1 cultivation space and some manufacturing. And then the true retail license allows you to have 5 locations within the state, but only 3 within 1 county. And so meaning you have to kind of spread out with those licenses, and those licenses purchase wholesale and sell at retail. And so typically they're the larger companies and corporations. I don't know if that helps kind of wrap your mind around.
Yeah. Clear as mud.
Right.
Yeah, no, I know there's a lot more to it. I mean, I guess the one thing that I was always thought funny was if you can grow it, you can manufacture it, but you can't drive it to your business.
Right.
If it's across the street or if it's down the road or whatever, or to town, that to me is a little deal. I mean, I agree you should be licensed to do it. I just don't agree why I wouldn't be able to get a license to do it, I guess.
Right, and you're only allowed, you're only allowed certain licenses. You can't have seed to sale. The tribes are allowed seed to sale through their compacting process, which is a different thing because they're sovereign nations within the state, right? And so the regulatory authority is passed on to that sovereign nation. And so within the state, though, you can't seed to sale with the exception of that micro business, provided you're not taking it from one place to another, essentially.
Right. Okay.
Your own property is not public space?
No.
The FDL would argue that.
Well,
no, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't think any landowner would call a piece of ground that they pay taxes on public.
Oh, I know, I agree. Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is county land, or state land probably. Tribal land might allow it, I suppose.
might allow for public consumption, or?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they have their own ordinances, each of the tribes, and they are going to be very, each of the tribes does have different thoughts on public consumption and things like that. I've been in California as well as Washington working in the cannabis industry, and some places allow for public consumption, some places don't. Some say so long as you're not bothering anyone, it's okay. What you have to consider is what is enforceable and what is the consequence, and how you write that and whose determination it is. And that's where I think there's problems in some of this with Minnesota law is, speaking to the 1 per 12,500, is how do you determine who is the right fit for your community? And while you have one per 12,500, I'm okay with that language being so that the rest are at your discernment, right? But how do you not create a situation of favoritism in that discernment, or of potential discrimination and things like that in choosing where those licenses go?
Well, I don't think we're here to pick winners or losers.
Right. No, I know. But I'm just saying that's kind of like what I see as problematic with the language more than anything is giving that discretion, to choose one over another.
And the public use, I think, is, someone walking down across the street from the school, or if there's a 4th of July event in the park that are not walking through the park.
Well, and the statute is clear on that, that you can't use near school, you can't use at a public event where children are present. And so, it does definitely state the things you shouldn't do, but what it leaves open is more the things that would be, on your own. You're not in one of those prohibited spaces. And so the question is, do you want to outright ban that ability to say you're alone on the lake and you want to smoke, or something like that?
Questions, anybody?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Come back up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So for consideration, is Koochiching County cannabis ordinance. We've heard public comments. We have some suggestions. What are the wishes of the board? I think legitimate concerns. I don't want to give the appearance that we are picking favors, because obviously we're not. I do understand the gentleman's concern about limiting, although that's not the intent. I think maybe some conversation with the communities that ceded that authority might be, because I didn't technically ask them to do that. They decided on their own to do that. I think maybe a conversation on what their intent is with that might be good, because I haven't. I don't know if anybody else has talked to anybody about that or talked to them. That might be a consideration to ask what their intent is, and see if there was a reason for that, or if they don't want specifically directly, and maybe get to the bottom of that. I guess that would be one of my concerns, because I hear the concern of limiting business. Because when you look at it as a business, it's a business. If you're complying with all the rules and zoning and all the business rules, I think you should be able to do whatever you want. Just like you'd be able to, if you want to buy a restaurant or a liquor store or whatever it might be, it should be, to me, no different than that. I know there's got to be some limitations, perhaps, but it's got to be reasonable for the size of the community that we do have. So, I don't know.
The administrator in Rainier just said that they don't want to have to put their own package together. They just wanted to cede it to the county.
Right.
I would assume that that's where most of the small towns are at.
Yeah, they don't want to go through this.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't limit. I don't feel like the language limits that. It's just if somebody come to us, my position would be exactly what the chair stated. That if the city wants it, that's fine.
Go to the city council there and ask them if they
City
want
council, they can approach them.
They say yes.
But anything outside of the city would, I mean, we're talking about cities, right?
Yeah.
But anything outside of that, they can come to us, and if they want to start one 10 miles down Sigma Road, I got it.
Yeah.
If we probably not going to get many passerbys, but it's their business. you know?
Right.
You want to start one up in the Black River Road someplace, you're not gonna get.
But does the language, you feel the language limits that ability though, I guess, is I think the concern. And I'll read that again.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I think for consideration, it's, you know, this board has gone through this and worked through this process, so for consideration, not the ordinance can't be changed, but we got to consider what future boards might think too. You know, that may change, and you know, through elections and things, you know, how we set this up for success in the future could be a consideration too. I don't think it limits to one; it says they have to do one, and then as you discussed and described, you can say yes or no moving forward. So I mean, you know, there probably different ways to write that, but this was the first go on that.
Yeah. Yeah, 2.6 is if Koochiching County has one active cannabis retail business registration for every 12,500 residents, Koochiching County shall not be required to register additional state licensed cannabis edition. How about we just remove Koochiching County shall not be required to register additional state licensed cannabis retail businesses, and just leave it at if Koochiching, well, I guess we have to change the whole thing. Have one active resident. We might as well just get it. Just can we do it right now? Is that okay? Koochiching County has one active retail.
Where's that at? Mr. Chair, where's that?
It's on page 7 of the ordinance, under 2.6, limiting of registrations. You could spit out some wording, anybody is able to do that. Anyway, I'm looking for wording that says that Koochiching County shall allow more than the required, Koochiching County shall allow more than the required one per 12,500 residents. Further, Koochiching County shall not limit registrations based on, I don't know, something that just kind of gets rid of the limitation wording. Because it isn't meant to be limiting, in my opinion. So,
Mr. Chair, if we write it that way, we need to, with a substantial change, we need to add a public hearing anyway. So, the board wishes to defer this back to the Cannabis Committee to respond to the public comments and make another recommendation to the board on any edits related to those, or if the board has specific guidance for the Cannabis Committee to change the ordinance, you can make that motion, table this, and make that a motion, and then the Cannabis Committee can certainly study this and come up with the language.
well, do we feel comfortable with a number? Do we want a number on it? 6.
Well, how about 1 per 1,000? How about 11?
Just for example, I think Cook County was very specific in saying there's this many in Lewiston, there's this many in this town, there's this many, so they went very detailed, and, it can be written in ways, like if you wanted it to say that we will allow one in each city that defers to us, so long as the city council approves it, we could write the ordinance as such. So there's different ways to go about that,
right?
And then still maybe keep this maybe broad language for additional beyond that.
That's a good
So
idea.
there's, just spitballing here, but there's different ways to go about this.
Well, that sounds a little more appropriate, because then you're going to allow, if you're going to allow like 6 of them, let's say, for sure 6, okay, we'll just make it 6. And then anything beyond that, you can just, then it has to go for approval if the cities have ceded their regulations to the county. So if they did that, why not have that separate language? I like that, that's a good idea.
Well, if we did 11, then you could have 2 in Northtown, you could have 2 in Mitzvah, you could have 2 in Big Falls, 2 in Birchdale, and then 2 in Rainier. you know, then there'd be plenty of them too.
I really like the idea of having a number though, and then being able to expand that number. I think that's gonna all sort itself out anyway. But it just depends on what type of zoning goes on there too. I mean, maybe you have a house that's already ready to roll, somewhere that somebody buys up and they wanna do it all in one right on there. They get a micro license or mezz license or whatever, and they do it all right on there in one spot. I mean, I think that's gotta be a consideration too, if that's, and obviously we're not limiting those at all. That has nothing to do with what we're doing here with this. So, it's just that wordage language with the residents and as one active. So, what do you think?
I think I like the shall not be required. I think we're arguing about a lot of, or discussing a lot of what ifs. I think maybe we enact it and we can amend it if we see how it lands. Hypotheticals are just that.
So your kind of is as is, and amend if necessary?
Yeah, I don't know that I would have some reservations about putting a number on there, then you might feel like you need to have that number. And what happens if that number is not there, or there's twice that number?
I think I understand without having a number, just maybe getting rid of the wording where it doesn't sound like we're only going to give one out.
Yeah.
Just something real simple. I'm for having thrown numbers like.
The intent was never to limit it to just one. The intent was to.
Right. No, I mean, but if someone from the outside is looking in at this, what are they thinking? If they're thinking, oh geez, I got to go through a process, and there's only one allowed, and I'm sure that one has already been gobbled up. Then I think that's the concern. Would that be accurate? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm sorry if I'm talking too. I talk softly as it is. I know you have some poor acoustics, but we're just trying to figure out how we can get to be a little more inviting with the language. I think the intent. I think everybody agrees.
You should put a number on it,
Yeah.
6, 12. The market should decide, because it can only, nobody's going to open up a business if they're not going to succeed.
Well, the market will. Yeah, the market. You're right.
And we will see what the market decides.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We will see what the market decides.
Yeah. So do we want to push it to the cannabis committee and reword that language to limit it, and then just have another public hearing with that language change?
I would say table it, let's get it back to our committee to get the wording changed.
Okay, what else do we want to look at? Is there any other, I lost my page again. We got a few more things there. Is there any considerations for those other items that we mentioned? Yeah, public use.
The zoning is kind of is in Matt's court, conditional use permits and changing the zoning around.
Yeah, I mean, the committee could look at those particular businesses and really kind of understand better what businesses fit under what zoning, and I think we've done that, but we could review that again.
Our ordinance does not address a mezzo or micro business that's a combination. And so I'm not a zoning expert, but the way I heard the public comment was, hey, can I just have one zoning for my micro business? I may not choose to do it all in that location, but I would like the ability to say, hey, this is a one-stop cultivate, manufacture, sell, and I really have to lot it off that way.
Yeah, when I looked at his particular site, we had thought, right now he's zoned R1 on the particular site he was looking at, and he thought he could do most everything except his retail with an AF1 zoning district, based on our current wording, of course. The question, we don't allow retail in residential districts or, those types of things. So that's a question that could be reviewed and discussed. And, the other thought that I had was, there's home occupation businesses in residential districts that allow for certain home occupations with a conditional use permit, right? So maybe some of that might fall under home occupation, possibly, depending on the type of use. So, yeah, there's probably more conversation on that than could be, but I understand. I mean, everybody wants to do everything in one location, right? But there's also neighbors in the neighborhood that may not like that, right? So that's the challenge of zoning and trying to take into consideration, what impacts might you have in the neighborhood, and what would those neighbors feel about that activity, right? So they do have their rights as well. That's why zoning was established, right? So there has to be the interest of the property owner or the person that wants to do the activity and the interest in nearby.
So we can have zoning kind of look at that a little bit?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I can summarize what I'm hearing, a motion if you want me to.
Yeah, maybe include also the public use, and then, okay, thanks.
So what I've heard in discussion is to refer the draft ordinance to the cannabis committee to review public comment related to zoning, number of retail locations, and public use, and make a recommendation back to the board for consideration.
Yes. That sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right? Who wants to have that motion?
Okay. Is good with that? Okay.
Is that okay with folks? Does that sound right? Okay.
Okay.
You got a motion? You got a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Roach, second by Commissioner McIntyre, to refer public comments back to Cannabis Committee and then represent and hold another public hearing for cannabis at a later date. I don't know, on Saturday. Okay.
We'll have to
Okay.
give the proper notice and do the proper publication, and so I'm sure the recommendation will come at a future committee of the whole, and then next board meeting, you guys can set up a public hearing, and you can start the process again.
All right, any discussion? Here now, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you to the public comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we'll bring this meeting to order. And we are on item A6, acknowledge resolution of delegating cannabis authority to Koochiching County from the city of Northmore. A summary of the issue is, per Minnesota statute, cities may delegate cannabis authority to their county. Northland has adopted a resolution delegating cannabis registration and enforcement authority to Koochiching County. Resolution 2024-11 from the city of Northland in Koochiching County, a resolution delegating cannabis business registration and enforcement authority to Koochiching County. It goes through the basic statute, one-pager, signed by the mayor, and adopted by the Northland City Council on their December 11, 2024 meeting. I think Matt and Adam helped them with that, I believe.
No,
None of them? Okay.
they had passed that previous to that.
Oh, okay, that's what it was, all right. So that is the consideration.
I would make that motion if we need a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Thank you. Next up is approve requesting county directors to identify mandated versus unmandated services and funding sources for each service. I think we kind of already do that to a certain extent, but I think the intention of that is to go through and see what our mandated services are, what mandated services are covered via state or federal or local funds, and then kind of divvy that up and get a good look at them and get that ready for budget season. I think is that kind of intent of that, Adam?
Yeah, we already, in response to the proposed budget cuts to local governments, estimated at $1.8 million for Koochiching County, and in preparation for 2026 budget process. Directors are being asked to identify what services and departments are mandated and which are unmandated, and to identify the funding source for each service and the amount of levy dollars used for each service. As we go through that process.
Questions on the motion? Or questions on the RDA? Accept the motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Thank you. Next up is pre-publication and recruitment of the Citizens Budget Committee. I think we've had some discussion here at our board and committee as a whole, part of the outreach effort a little bit, kind of going to the different communities throughout the county. This again is another offering to get some citizen input during the budget process time. I know these are open and public meetings and anybody can attend at any time for any reason, but to have someone committed to be on the committee, to be as available as possible to go through the budget with us, which spans from, I think our timeline is where we actually start looking at this here is probably late August-ish through December when the budget has to be adopted. So, and there's timelines in there too. I think we have a timeline of adopting a preliminary levy towards the end of September, and then we kind of adjust from there. So that is what's up for consideration here, and we're proposing that we advertise a publication of the citizen budget to include appointment of a member from each district for a 3-year term. And wishes of the board.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre.
I'll second.
Seconded, Commissioner Howell. Discussion.
Is that mileage and per diem?
I believe it would be, wouldn't it?
That's up to the board. Everybody's different.
We can offer Zoom, but yeah, that's a good question.
If you want to add expense, that would be an expense. We got probably, how many months is that? 4 months times 4 meetings a month. Times 5 times whatever you do. It's not in the student budget for that. That would be a consideration of the board.
I think if that was, if we're actually going to do that, then that's no more than fair.
Right.
For the people, especially in my district or Destry's district. They're driving a lot of miles, and
Just those two districts.
Yeah, state mileage and then some sort of per diem. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think we do the GSA mileage, and then the per diem. I don't know what the per diem is normally.
What are they?
65 and 70.
65 for a board member and 70 for chair. Okay.
I'm not. I guess we can see what we get for response, but I still the regional board meetings might be a better that we've had. Maybe the question needs to be there, what are your priorities? You might get the same thing, but at no cost. Well, cost of getting there.
Yeah, and if there's not interest in this, and if it, we don't get applicants or people that want to do that, well then, we can certainly try, and that's, I think, with all the stuff going on and all the considerations of taking a good look at the budget. This is an offering just to take a look at it, see what, and get in depth with it. I think I like it when we go line by line. Honestly, I learn a lot when we go through everything. I know we don't learn everything, but really do get to see what each and every line does or doesn't do. So I think that's a good way of doing it, and just offering that to someone that would want to, or have interest in doing that that'd be great. So it's not a glamorous, that's for sure, but it's something to offer.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that we have a per diem for appointed committee members. We're all committee. We have a per diem for our boards and our planning and zoning and our those boards, but there's a lot of committees and citizens that sit on it. I don't think we have a need. I don't believe.
Our solid waste advisory has the opportunity to claim per diem. Our planning and zoning, our board of adjustment, so all of those can claim per diem. Some people donate, of course, but some claim per diem and mileage. And then I think the policy doesn't. Policy just says committees appointed or established by the county.
I'll tell you what, to move this along, if we do get applicants, so we have a first and a second, if we get applicants, we want to have that discussion at that time?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Fine.
We can move it to, a fee schedule for committee if they're easy. If we don't even know if there's going to be a committee as yet, right? So if we do get that, we can maybe discuss it at that time. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. And motion carries. Next up is assessor business. I consider for property tax abatement. Come on up, Len.
Did you ask anybody? I did. First. That's what I like to have.
So essentially, what we have is, we discovered we had a building value twice in the same property. And normally, you and I would probably catch that because we would know the values, but as Frank's Garbage, they got a lot of buildings and a lot of property, and they probably didn't catch it. And you can maybe ask, well, how can that happen? I'm guessing it's commercial. And I pretty much do the commercial, and when you go in the system, you don't have a lot of categories for commercial, like residential is just all residential, garages, garages. Commercial, you try to identify a category for what the use is, and you don't have all these. So what I mean by that is probably we went in there and did it as a commercial garage, maybe went in there and did it as a commercial warehouse, maybe went in there and called it a commercial other to check the values, and what happens, somebody that comes in or somebody calls or whatever, and one of those classifications doesn't get deleted from the file. That's what happens. And so we're just going back for 2 years and abating we've taken the building off the property. That's what it is, yeah.
So just an honest mistake.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to think I'm honest.
Oh, yeah, no. All right, wishes of the board.
I'll make the motion for abatement.
I'll second it. Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Thank you, Len. Next up is Health and Human Services. We have a warrant void, a couple of warrant voids.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Excuse me, one warrant void.
Yep.
For $52. I accept the motion to approve that void.
That's motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Roach. All those in favor of approving the vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the vote is approved. Thank you. Next up is consider approval of the MOU between Koochiching Family Collaborative and South Koochiching Rainy River Independent School District 363.
Yep, this is in response, we, through the Koochiching Family Collaborative, we bring in state dollars that we can utilize for children's mental health type services. We work closely with the schools. Revenues generated through random moment time studies, through the school districts, through public health, through probation. We work with all those groups to try to do some wraparound approach to children's mental health needs in the community. The funding's not a whole lot, but it is something that we can generate from that. We have had a contract with Northline Counseling for many years to provide some CTSS type services and things like that for the districts in the region. They used to do a lot of work out at Innis. Since Innis is no longer there, they haven't been utilizing the services. Tried to utilize them in North Home, but Northline Counseling wasn't able to accommodate sending a physical person there. We calculated this dollar amount out utilizing staff or student enrollment numbers, generation of the funds to figure out where the funding could be used different places. And this is the amount. North Home School has an agreement with Stellar Human Services, and then they also have one with Southwest Regional Service Collaborative that provides services in the school for them. And they are going to use this funding source that would have normally been through the contract with Northline Counseling. They're going to use this funding source to help offset the cost of their needs for that. It's a way to keep it fair all the way across the board because they're generating money for the collaborative. This is a way to help cover the cost of their services that they can't receive in their normal means to do it. So.
Right. And that funding is $37.65.
Yeah.
That's going to help cover those associated costs, and anything beyond that they would take.
They would take on themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, very similar to what's done through the contract. We only have so much money we can work with, and it has to go beyond that. So.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is it, where does the funding come from? Is it revenue? Is it?
No, it's generated through the local collaborative time study, which is random moments that go out there. Say you're a probation worker, a school worker, public health nurse, you'll get a random moment email. You'll respond to that random moment. There's a secret formula that the state uses. They won't give it to us because they don't want you to pick the same ones all the time. And then that comes in as revenue to our office through the Koochiching Family Collaborative, and it has to be used for these things. So it's state dollars. It's a state reimbursement system.
So that's just one of those things where they just pick and choose randomly throughout your departments. And
Yep.
see what goes around. Okay.
Yep, and it always seems if somebody's on a week vacation, they'll get 3 or 4 of them.
Of course.
Because you have to respond in a timely manner. And if they're on vacation, that's when it seems like people get 3 of them. So it used to be a lot more revenue that was generated through this, but the state has made changes throughout the years, and it's very much dwindled from what it used to be able to be as far as a funding source for children's mental health services. So unfortunate, but at least it's still around for a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. Wishes of the board.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Any discussion? Thanks for explaining that. If there's no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Next up is consider approval of burial.
This is for one of our county residents that met the threshold for our county burial policy, so statutorily.
Can I get a motion on the burial?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre.
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'll get a signature from you too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Can I get there?
Sure. Well, you can wait for another hour. Today. 22nd.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Our complex business is consider approval of a dead tree in front of the courthouse. And I think we all seen it.
Mr. Chair, Means adjourned.
Okay, I think I know what
We
it
all
is.
know what this topic's about, so we just felt we need to get that moving if we want to go up for bid or something.
Is that the only one we need to get rid of over
I
there?
believe so.
There's a couple other trees that need some branches trimmed up, and we'll take that down.
Okay, all right. I was just gonna, just see if, I know there's a few other ones look like they're in it.
Yep.
All right, wishes of the board.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Roach.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Any discussion on the trees? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll get rid of those trees. Hi Nathan, thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, no problem.
And we're gonna kind of go over the intermediate transfer policy that you created.
Yeah, so this is for the board to consider instituting or adopting this draft policy wherein currently we don't allow the transfer of intermediate timber sales from logging operation to logging operation. If this policy was adopted, it would allow it in the rare circumstance somebody's going out of business. So if somebody's going to go out of business currently, they have an intermediate timber sale, they either have to cut it or they forfeit it and forfeit basically their money that they put down on the sale. So this gives them an option to potentially transfer that sale and get it cut still in a timely manner.
But it doesn't give them the option to go bid and then sell and bid. And
No, there's protections in this policy, and if they were to try to do that, say they said we're going out of business, they transferred one or more intermediate timber sales, and 6 months later they said we want to get back into it, there's penalties attached to that.
we had a couple of turns.
Yeah, and then there's monetary penalties as well, so.
I think we discussed that last time.
Yeah.
All right, wishes of the board.
Moved.
Support.
A motion by Commissioner Erickson, seconded by Commissioner Hill. Any discussion? Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for getting us moving there.
Yeah.
Morning, Trent.
It's afternoon now.
Is it afternoon? It is afternoon. Thank you, Trent.
All right, good news all around, right? First item is award project low SAP 036 608 025. It's also tied to 036 609 007, as well as the jail parking lot. We received authorization to bid these projects, actually on two separate occasions. Jail project was separate from the SAP projects, but we packaged them together. We had bid opening on the 14th at 2 p.m. We had a total of 5 bids, which was excellent. Engineer's estimate was about 4.4 million. Low bid was KGM. They came in at $2,617,444.15, or 60% of the engineer's estimate. Now, when we bid these projects, so like County Road 9, that's going to be 4 inches of bituminous. It's 26,000 ton approximately. In the past, since I've been here, I think the lowest we've ever seen is about $75 a ton for bid. We typically use an engineer's estimate of $95 to $100 to be on the safe side. KGM came in at under $53. Wow.
So we saved about $1.2 million right there, just off of that low number.
Thank you, KGM.
Yeah, the number 2 bidder, I think it was Hawkinson, if I recall. Yeah, Hawkinson.
they came in at $58 a ton, which again is ridiculously low. Questioned them about it, said what's going on. Apparently there just isn't a whole lot of resurfacing projects around Minnesota, so these bigger companies are coming in with significantly lower numbers. Would have been nice to know. We could have expanded this project even more. But. So yeah, what else do we have here? The jail parking lot project. That portion of the project, which is paid separate from state aid, it will go through the jail project. That came in at $44,631.50. Our engineer's estimate on that was a little over $50,000. ICS had budgeted, it was $80,000 plus, somewhere around there. So, you know, thankfully we were able to cut that number in half as well.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's always it's always good to have an engineer's estimate a little bit higher than the actual bid, but you know, that much higher doesn't look real great, but
Looks better than being that much low.
well, yeah.
We've seen that.
Well, it's acceptable, and then as long as everything's, you know, right with the bid and the bid prep and things like that, I'd be comfortable accepting the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Price of fuel is dropping.
That's good. Yeah, that's very good news. That it's, you know, significant, very significant.
Yeah, like I said, it would have been nice to kind of have a little bit of a handle on that before going into the project, and we could have, you know, maybe done another 10 miles of mill and overlay or some kind of resurfacing project like that. So I asked if it would continue on to next year, and they said no comment.
Yeah, it's pretty fluid, I think, those numbers.
Yeah. Item number 2 here is authorize award of CP 2025-01 crack seal and mastic repair. We received authorization to seek bids back on 3/11/25. We had a bid opening on 4/14 at 2/15. Again, we received a total of 5 bids. And if folks remember, crack sealing is always all over the place. You know, we usually get some really high numbers and we'll get some really low numbers. This year was no different. Engineer's estimate placed the project at $237,674.04. Lot Pros came in as their best value, low bid, at $208,088.24, or 88% of the engineer's estimate. This project includes Cassat 2, basically from Brown's Corner up to Forest Land here, and then also includes Keenan and 20th Street. Funded by state aid maintenance, looking for authorization.
What wishes of the board? I'll make a motion. Thank you, Commissioner Roach.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunt. Discussion. Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 3, same deal, authorization to award CP 2025-02. This is our striping contract. We received authorization again on that 3/11 date. Bid opening was 4/14 at 2:30. We received a total of 1 bid. And, you know, that's not out of the question. Sir Lancelot has kind of monopolized the painting throughout this area, throughout all Minnesota. So they purchased all their competition. There are a couple other entities that have tried to make it go. I know we had 2 bids last year. That bidder, I don't know if he folded or just decided not to bid, but Yep, just Sir Lines a lot this year. So engineer's estimate was $67,894.20. Lines a Lot was the only bidder at $70,911.72, which is 104% or 4% above the engineer's estimate. Roads are shown in the exhibits there. But would request authorization for that contract.
Wishes of the vote.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. Thank you, Commissioner Eichelberg. There is quite a difference between the two different kinds of paints, isn't there? Significant.
Yeah, if you're looking at epoxy, it's, I don't know, 5 times more.
It's very expensive.
This project would be a $300,000 project versus a $70,000 project.
Oh, this include the fog lines too?
Yeah.
Okay, it does include that.
Yeah.
I was a little confused on that, if it was, I know it said the solid and the stripe yellow, and I wasn't comprehending what it was.
Yeah, it includes center line and fog lines.
Fog lines, okay. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries.
And then finally, this last one, authorize award of SAP 036-628-004. So this is the CASA 28. It's the Island Lake Road down south of North Home. If you guys remember, this project is in conjunction with an Itasca County project. They asked us if we wanted to include this project in with them. Since the contractor is going to be down there, we got good pricing, you'll see as well. But the project is going to be run through Itasca. They're going to be doing all the inspection. They do the contract certification and everything. So basically, this is more of us just transferring money from our state aid account to cover the cost over to Itasca County.
They'll include it in their project.
Yeah.
That was nice of them.
Yeah.
How long of a distance is this for on the?
It's about a mile. And it's just a simple mill and overlay project. Yeah, they got 5 bids down there when they did the bid opening. Hawkinson was low bid. Engineer's estimate was $61,484.65. Like I said, Hawkinson came in at $51,411.72. And at the time when they did the bid opening, I think Hawkinson had $65 bid. And I was super impressed with that at the time. But yeah, this funding would come out of our state aid construction account.
Right, wishes of the board. Thank you, Commissioner Roach.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And motion carries. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks.
Great pricing.
Yeah.
That's always nice when you can save a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, Matt. Next up is environmental services. The first item is to authorize agreement for AIS inspection.
Yes, so this is a contract with St. Louis County Soil and Water Conservation District. Over the last few years, we've been providing AIS inspectors for their sites at Lake Capitola and Ash River. We administer an AIS watercraft inspection program in Koochiching County and obviously do those inspections on our boat landings at various locations.
This contract is to also provide those inspectors for those sites in St. Louis County. It's, we get funding through the state for AIS and programming, and St. Louis County will pay for their portion of the cost associated with their landings and inspections we provide. So 100% paid for through St. Louis County, and their AIS dollars. So this is just requesting authorization to enter into the contract with St. Louis County for the inspection.
And then when you go for the staffing, then that just becomes part of the overall staffing for everything in our county. And
that's correct. Yep. So, yes, we have Always There Staffing is a staffing agency that provides temporary AIS inspectors for us. They're in the process of getting some certified and advertising for more. We try to get 7 inspectors for our program to rotate through the different sites. For years, we've had troubles trying to fill all those spots. It's hard to find inspectors, and so, but we take the existing staff that Always There is able to provide us. They get certified through the state to be an inspector, and then we rotate them through. And again, St. Louis County SWCD reimburses us the costs associated with this. So. And the reason why we do it is because we're closer. I mean, St. Louis County's operations are much further away, and it makes sense for us to, send inspectors from our area versus where they're coming from. So.
Oh, there's some busy areas too that they
yes.
cover, so.
Yeah, they're national park boat launches. So we do the ones here on Rainy Lake, but then they have national park, Voyageurs National Park boat launches at those locations as well. And we try to collaborate with the Park Service as well, with AIS. The Park Service does inspection on the portage at Kettle Falls, and then they've purchased a couple decontamination units that they would love to have us man if we can at those locations, at park boat launches, but dependent on staffing. And this contract is dependent on staffing. If we don't have enough staff, then we can't provide the services. But, we hope that we get enough so that we can rotate them through. So.
All right. Wishes of the board.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. Discussion. Yes, please.
Do we collect an administrative fee for managing all that?
In the contract, it includes our time related, so it's not just the inspectors, but it also includes our time for administering our AIS inspectors and any of the needed items that we provide. So yes.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Okay.
Yeah, so the next item that I have is we started on the Rainy Lake RV sanitary sewer project. And this is to approve payment to Wagner Construction. And I've included the construction project application number 1 for the Rainy Lake RV sanitary sewer project. They've mobilized to the site, and this first construction pay application is in the amount, or the total amount due less 5% retainage for work items completed on the project through April 16th is $35,994.55. The pay application includes half of the mobilization and an electrical allowance for obtaining power. So all of the documentation is included. But this is the first application for payment, and they're well on their way in the construction. I was out there this weekend, and they've got EBI has directionally drilled the pipe in, so now Wagner, I believe this week, will be going in there and digging in grinder stations and various other structures and starting that end of it. So
yeah, I seen you. I went out there by there too. They had equipment on site, and I'd read in an email that they had already had the lines in, shot in, so
Right,
that was
right.
quick, very quick.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
licensure thing didn't slow them down a bit.
No, and we got that in place too, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was motivation.
All right. Wishes of the board.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Mel.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Any discussion? Just a quick question. What was our timeline again, just for the reference again for getting it completed?
So our grants, everything has to be completed by the end of 2026, but I expect that this completion date will be by the end of the summer.
By the end of this summer? Okay.
Yeah. Most of the work will be done this spring. Some of the other power is probably going to take the longest time. But most of the work should be done this spring.
And that's included in this project, the power is, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to have power to our structures to be able to operate the system, so.
All right. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'll open the floor to public comment. If there's anybody in person or online for public comment, please come forward. We have no one here in person for public comment. If there's anybody online. Anybody online for public comment? It's good to see you, Crystal. All right, no public comment. Any other business item? Other business? If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Roach. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And we are adjourned.